Another major mayoral race is gaining plenty of attention. The Minnesota Democratic Farm Labor Party has rescinded its endorsement of State Senator Omar Fateh for Minneapolis mayor. The current mayor praising it, saying, quote, "I am proud to be a member of a party that believes in correcting our mistakes." For more, let's bring in the Federalist Brianna Lyman. Brianna, thanks for joining us. Do you think that Fateh can still win this race in Minneapolis, or does this lack of endorsement really create a problem for him?
No, I think he still has a really good shot of becoming the next mayor. And it's precisely because what's happening in Minneapolis is happening across this country, right? There is an active surge of socialism that is crashing into the Democratic establishment. We just talked about New York City. Zohran Mamdani is a socialist, likely going to be the next mayor. You have Omar Fateh, likely going to be the next mayor in Minneapolis. You had David Hogg, a young progressive who was fighting the DNC establishment. And so the big question that these mayoral races are forcing Democratic leaders to answer, and hopefully they'll answer it right, is are they going to be able to contain the Democratic socialist surge that is engulfing their party? Because right now there is infighting in the Democratic Party. It is the old establishment versus the new radical flank. And if we see New York City and Minneapolis fall to socialist, I think that's going to be the tip of the iceberg.
Now you look here. Here's some video from the chair of the political committee of Minneapolis for the Many on her perspective of what the party did in rescinding that endorsement.
Party insiders overturned a democratically held endorsement of State Senator Omar Fateh for Minneapolis mayor. It is a slap in the face to Minneapolis residents, to DFL members and volunteers who worked fairly and collaboratively to conduct the convention. And more importantly, this is a distraction.
Do you think rescinding that could actually really spur his supporters to show up to the polls and maybe get him a little bit more boost behind his candidacy?
I do think so. And I also think the irony cannot be lost on us that 5 years ago, if you questioned if an election was conducted fairly, you were smeared as an election denier and you committed the gravest sin in politics. And yet 5 years later, Democrats are now infighting, overturning elections based on that very same question. You know, we see it in Minneapolis. We saw it with David Hogg and the DNC. So I don't think that irony should be lost. And I also think that does act as an impetus to younger radical progressives who are now more enticed to go to the polls just to kind of, shove it up the DFL's, behind.
Well, do you think now that you've got this whole thing playing out, do you think we're going to just have pockets of sort of moderate Democrats, more socialist, liberal-leaning Democrats winning in certain races and really not as much of a national party identity as they'd like?
Well, they have to make sure that the national party identity does not fall into socialist hands precisely because the American people don't want that. Not only did we see that massive shift to the right across the entire country in November, but that New York Times analysis just came out this week, and it shows that not only are Democrats hemorrhaging key constituencies, they are struggling to get new registrations. And it's because the party and the brand is toxic. People do not subscribe to these far left ideas. These far left ideas may work in certain small left-wing cities. It doesn't work nationwide, which is why Democratic leaders must reclaim their party from these far-left advocates who are really alienating most of America.
Now, turning to the House Oversight Committee, it's doing this investigation into the autopen. President Biden, whether staffers used the autopen on his behalf without him knowing about it. That's at least the allegation of it. Spoke with spokesperson Ian Sams, and Comer said that Sams only spoke to the president directly twice, had another phone call, another Zoom meeting or a conference call meeting with him. Where do you think this investigation all ends up?
Yeah, this testimony is really damning because Ian Sams met with Joe Biden twice in 2 years in person, and yet he went out of his way to do things like discredit the Robert Hur report, even though Robert Hur probably spent more time with Joe Biden than Ian Sams. Ian Sams called those who questioned Biden's cognitive decline and the cover-up, he accused them of peddling conspiracy theories. And what was really going on here is Ian Sams was not working to protect or work on behalf of Joe Biden. He was working on behalf of an unelected Politburo superhero who was running the show from the Oval Office. And what Ian Sam's role was to create the illusion that Joe Biden was still functioning as president. That's why he went out for 2 years and claimed everything is fine. And so I think that there needs to be, of course, serious accountability. Ian Sams is one of the only people that's actually testified and not pled the fifth, which is important and a good step in the right direction. But just because he gave some answers doesn't mean we should stop there. He needs to be held accountable, and so does the rest of them.
Yeah, Sams and his colleagues have been telling the committee, look, the president may have slipped up from time to time, but he was in control. He was the president and knew what he was doing. Well, Brianna Lyman from The Federalist, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.